It all started on one of those slow Saturday mornings when the sun paints everything gold, and you think nothing bad can touch you. Michael Turner, a 39-year-old electrical engineer with grease under his nails and a lifetime of fixing other people's problems, was finally taking a weekend off. He'd built his dream home on the edge of a quiet cul-de-sac, a 2-car garage, a modest workshop, and a truck he'd spent 6 years restoring with his late father. That blue and white 1985 Chevy C10 wasn't just a vehicle. It was a memory, a promise, and the one piece of family history he could still hold with both hands. When the HOA had formed 3 years earlier, he didn't think much of it. They promised cleaner lawns, community events, and increased property values. He'd nodded politely, paid his dues, and gone back to work. What he didn't know then was that the new HOA president, a retired realtor named Linda Grayson, had a personal obsession with image, and his classic truck didn't fit her curated postcard vision of neighborhood perfection. It began with notes slipped under his door. Polite at first, "Please park the truck inside." Then the tone changed. "Remove the non-compliant vehicle immediately or face daily fines." He'd laughed them off. The truck already was inside, polished, covered, parked neatly in his own locked garage. But HOA logic didn't care about walls. The complaint claimed that non-operational vehicles stored in garages visible from driveways violate community harmony. Michael had rolled his eyes, snapped a few photos of the closed garage door, and emailed them back as proof. The response came at 2 a.m., a formal violation letter time-stamped in the HOA portal. He didn't realize at the time that Linda had allies, the local tow contractor her cousin owned, and a board of yes-men who'd never said no to her once. The real storm hit 2 weeks later. He returned home from a night shift to find his garage door cracked open, lock drilled out, tire marks across the driveway, and the space empty. His chest tightened, mind blank. He thought it was theft. He called 911, voice shaking, only for the officer to ask the simplest question, "Are you in an HOA community, sir?" When he said yes, the cop sighed like he'd heard it all before. "Then your car probably isn't stolen, it's towed. Check with them first." Michael didn't believe it until he saw the orange sticker on his garage frame. "Vehicle removed per HOA order. Contact Premier Towing LLC for release." That moment, something inside him cracked. His father's truck, his last piece of home, was gone, yanked out of his own property while he was paying the mortgage. He stormed down to the HOA office, but Linda met him with her perfect smile and a cup of herbal tea she didn't offer him. "Michael, you've been in violation for months," she said sweetly. The board voted unanimously. "You can collect your vehicle once you cover storage and removal fees." He demanded to see the vote record, but she waved a manicured hand. "All internal documentation confidential by policy." He clenched his fists but walked away. That night, he sat at his kitchen table surrounded by stacks of HOA bylaws, city ordinances, and his father's old mechanic manuals. If there was one thing his dad had taught him, it was this: you never fight dirty, you fight smart. The next morning, instead of going to the tow yard, he drove to the county clerk's office. In a folder of property codes and access rights, he found something Linda hadn't noticed. His garage was listed as a private enclosed structure exempt from vehicle storage restrictions, meaning the HOA had absolutely no jurisdiction to enter or remove anything from it. The words hit like caffeine to his veins. He photographed every line, notarized copies, and called his lawyer friend from college who now specialized in property torts. Together they drafted a simple plan, not revenge yet, just justice. They'd file a cease and desist, demand full reimbursement, and report Premier Towing LLC for illegal entry. But as he prepared the paperwork, another thought flickered. Linda wasn't the type to make mistakes. She'd gone through the trouble of breaking a lock and filing a fraudulent order. That meant something bigger was brewing behind the scenes. He poured another cup of coffee, looked at the empty space where the truck had been, and muttered to himself, "You wanted a fight, Linda? Fine, let's have one." He didn't know yet that this fight would take him from small claims court to the heart of a corruption scheme, and would end with him owning the very company that took his truck away. Michael Turner didn't sleep that night. The house felt hollow without the soft smell of motor oil coming from the garage. Every creak of the floorboards reminded him of the theft wearing a smile, the kind that carried a clipboard and quoted bylaws. By sunrise, he had brewed enough coffee for a small army and filled the kitchen table with files, ordinances, and HOA covenants. He read each clause like scripture, circling every phrase that mentioned access, storage, or private property. The more he read, the clearer it became. The HOA had no right to enter his garage, no right to authorize a tow, and absolutely no authority to remove private property without a court order. That meant this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a crime dressed as paperwork. When he stepped outside, the neighborhood was calm, sprinklers ticking, kids biking past, the same perfection Linda liked to brag about in newsletters. But to Michael, it all looked like a movie set hiding rot underneath the paint. He opened his phone and began recording a slow pan of his driveway, the broken latch on the garage, the orange tow sticker. Evidence, he muttered. His father used to say a good mechanic always documents the damage before fixing it. By noon, he was sitting in his truck cab at the county recorder's office, a notebook full of names. He asked the clerk for towing permits filed by Premier Towing LLC over the past 2 years. The clerk hesitated, then handed over a stack thick enough to choke a stapler. Every single order was signed by the same person, L. Grayson, HOA president. Dozens of vehicles removed, fines issued, storage fees collected, more than $70,000 in enforcement costs. Half of those names belonged to homeowners who had moved away within months. It wasn't just abuse of power. It was extortion hiding behind community bylaws. Michael drove home shaking with equal parts fury and adrenaline. He called his lawyer friend, Sam Patel, and spilled everything. Sam's voice came calm and clinical. You've got them, Mike. Illegal entry, conversion, conspiracy if we can prove intent. But you'll need documentation and a chain of custody for every action they took. Michael grinned for the first time in days. Documentation's my specialty. He spent the next week collecting it like a hunter setting traps. HOA emails, violation letters, payment receipts from residents, even photos scraped from the community Facebook group where Linda bragged about cleaning up unsightly vehicles. He printed every piece, labeled it, and locked it inside a binder that grew fatter each night. Then came the surveillance footage. His neighbor across the street, an old veteran named Carl, mentioned he had a security camera facing the cul-de-sac. Caught them hauling your truck at 3:14 a.m., Carl said, handing over the USB stick. 2 guys, bolt cutters, HOA vest on one of them. Never saw cops or court papers. Michael nearly laughed at the absurdity, a robbery with uniforms and paperwork. That clip would be his silver bullet. He sat in the dim light of his living room watching the footage on repeat. Frame by frame, the glow of the tow truck headlights cutting across his lawn, the men breaking his lock, the silhouette of Linda herself standing at the curb, arms folded, supervising like a queen at a public hanging. That image burned into him. He saved the clip in 3 different drives and sent one to Sam. Then he started thinking beyond legal action. If Linda used Premier Towing as her personal enforcer, there had to be money changing hands. He looked up the company's registration, a limited liability corporation run by C. Grayson, her cousin. Their office sat in a warehouse district on the other side of town. The next morning, Michael took a personal day from work, put on his old maintenance jacket, and drove there under the pretense of asking about a quote for fleet towing. The receptionist barely looked up. The office smelled of burnt coffee and old rubber. Behind the counter, rows of folders were stacked on open shelves. Labels scrawled in marker. HOA, Green Oaks, AOA, Clearwater, Private. He caught glimpses of invoices listing inflated storage fees, dates matching the violations he'd already seen in the HOA logs. It was a racket. Linda issued fines, Premier enforced them, and both sides split the profits. He kept his face neutral, thanked the clerk, and left with a fake business card left behind to make it look routine. That evening, Sam came by with his laptop and a legal pad. Together they drafted letters, one to the county district attorney's office outlining unlawful towing practices, one to the state licensing board about improper towing permits, and another, the most detailed, to the HOA board demanding an emergency meeting and restitution. We'll give them a chance to hang themselves politely before we bring the rope, Sam said. Michael nodded. They mailed the letters certified, every receipt stapled to the growing evidence binder. 2 days later, Linda called. Her voice was syrupy sweet again, but Michael could hear the edge. Mr. Turner, she said, this sudden hostility isn't helpful. If you'd simply paid the fees, we could have avoided all this unpleasantness. He let the silence drag before answering. I don't pay thieves, Linda. I expose them. She hung up without another word. The HOA meeting came the following week in the community clubhouse. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, and the smell of weak coffee. Half the neighborhood showed up, curious after Michael's email had circulated, hinting at serious violations of trust. Linda sat at the head of the long table, flanked by her loyal board members. Michael waited until everyone had settled, then rolled in a portable projector. "Before we start," he said calmly, "I'd like to show something." The footage began, the truck being dragged out of his locked garage, Linda visible at the scene. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "She was there?" He let it play twice, then clicked to the next slide. The permits, invoices, and bank transfers linking the HOA account to Premier Towing. Linda's face drained of color. "This is slander," she stammered. Completely out of context. But one of the board members, a quiet accountant named Ruth, spoke up. "I handle the HOA payments, Linda. These checks, they're signed by you." The room fell silent. Michael didn't shout. He didn't need to. He laid out the county exemption clause, the illegal entry statute, the video timestamp. When he finished, he simply said, "You towed my father's truck from my own garage. I want it back. I want the fees refunded to every homeowner you've wronged. And I want you to resign before this leaves this room." For a long time, no one moved. Then Ruth stood, gathered her papers, and said softly, "I second that motion." The meeting ended in chaos, Linda storming out to the sound of murmurs and cell phone cameras clicking. By nightfall, the story had already spread across the neighborhood chat. Premier Towing's phone went straight to voicemail, but Michael wasn't done. The next week, he got a call from the county investigator following up on his complaint. "Mr. Turner, we reviewed your evidence. Those towing orders were illegal. We'll be opening a fraud inquiry into Premier Towing's contracts." He thanked the man and hung up, feeling the first real calm he'd had in months. Then another idea sparked, and something bold, poetic. He looked up Premier Towing's business license again. The company was in financial distress, unpaid taxes, pending violations, and the owner listed as seeking sale. He called Sam. "What if," he said slowly, "we don't just sue them? What if we own them?" Sam laughed, then stopped when he heard the seriousness in Michael's tone. "You're serious, aren't you?" Michael was. Over the next month, through a quiet network of investors and a loan leveraged against his workshop, he arranged a buyout. 2 months later, Premier Towing LLC changed ownership to Turner Recovery Services. The first act under new management: deliver a truck back to its rightful owner, free of charge. By spring, the neighborhood saw tow trucks with new decals reading "Integrity, not Intimidation." Linda had vanished from public life, her resignation posted quietly online. The HOA board elected Ruth as interim president, promising transparency and reform. Michael kept mostly to himself, spending weekends in the garage again, polishing chrome and breathing the scent of oil and pine. One evening, Carl came over with a beer and a grin. "Heard you bought the Devil's Chariot Company," he said. Michael chuckled, raising his bottle. "Figured if they were going to haul away my truck, I might as well haul away their business." The two men laughed, the sound rolling down the quiet street. Somewhere inside, the anger had finally settled into something steadier. Peace earned, not granted. And as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, the blue and white Chevy gleamed in the fading light. The same truck, the same man, but a story that now belonged entirely to him. Spring turned to summer, and the headlines that once made Michael's blood boil had become footnotes in county court records. The fraud case against Linda Grayson and her cousin unfolded quietly but decisively. Misuse of HOA funds, falsified towing orders, illegal access to private property. Michael didn't have to testify long. His binder, photographs, emails, timestamps, did the talking. The prosecutor even held up the frame from the security video showing Linda on the curb as the tow truck rolled away. The jury needed less than an hour. She lost her license, her reputation, and the right to serve on any homeowner's board again. When the verdict came down, Michael sat in the back row of the courtroom, hands folded. He didn't cheer. He simply nodded once, a small exhale of everything that had built inside him since the day his garage was broken into. Outside reporters asked for comment. He said only, "I just wanted my father's truck back." The rest was justice doing its job. The clip went viral overnight. People loved the calm man who beat an HOA by knowing the law better than they did. Owning Premier Towing, now Turner Recovery Services, had changed his days completely. Instead of predatory calls, they now handled roadside assistance for local charities, veterans, and elderly residents. He'd rehired 2 of the old drivers who had quit when Linda forced them into shady deals. The trucks were repainted bright white with clean blue lettering, and every invoice carried a line at the bottom: "Respect property. Respect people." Business grew faster than he'd imagined. One afternoon, Ruth from the HOA stopped by with a folder. "The board voted to issue full refunds to everyone affected," she said, smiling. And we'd like you to head our new compliance committee. Help us fix what she broke." Michael laughed softly. "You sure you want the guy who bought your tow company policing you?" Ruth shrugged. "Exactly why we trust you." On weekends, he still worked on the Chevy, though now it sat beneath new LED lights and a garage door with reinforced locks. Sometimes he'd open the door, look at the truck, and remember his father's voice. "Fight smart." That voice had carried him through every twist of this mess. He realized he hadn't just reclaimed a vehicle, he'd reclaimed his peace, his dignity, and his faith that truth can still outlast arrogance. One evening, he hosted a neighborhood barbecue, the first in years that didn't end in arguments about regulations. Families brought dishes, kids ran through sprinklers, and even the strictest rule followers loosened up. Carl toasted him with a grin. "To the man who taught us you don't beat power with anger, you beat it with paperwork." Laughter filled the cul-de-sac. Michael raised his glass, the sunset glinting off the truck's chrome. "And a little persistence," he added. When the stars came out, he stood alone by the fence, listening to the hum of crickets and distant highway noise. For the first time, the neighborhood sounded like home again. He thought about how one small act of greed had spiraled into a storm, and how that storm had washed the lies clean. The HOA would keep its rules, the lawns would stay neat, but now everyone knew where the line was, and that a single determined homeowner could defend it. He closed the garage door, the sound echoing like a period at the end of a long sentence. Tomorrow he'd wake up early, drive his truck down the same street that once mocked him, and pass the sign that read, "Welcome to Clearwater Estates." Underneath it, a smaller plaque had been added, "Community Integrity Program sponsored by Turner Recovery Services." He smiled at that. Maybe, he thought, this was how you fix broken systems, not by burning them down, but by rebuilding them piece by piece from the inside out. And as he turned off the lights and headed inside, the camera of life pulled back slowly. Quiet cul-de-sac bathed in amber light, the truck gleaming in silhouette, and the faint sense that somewhere his father was proud.